Hello.
Good day, everyone. A warm welcome to Talking Up Africa. Thanks so much for joining us on this Thursday. This is Talking Up Africa's episode 4 on digital disruption and technologies for positive impact in African markets. What a brave and brilliant discussion we've got ahead of you today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to our international speakers and experts on this exciting subject. I know you're in for an absolute treat of a conversation and learning session. Now, if this is your first time in Talking Up Africa, it's a live, contemporary business show that focuses on current African affairs in business. It's produced by our team here at Africa Scotland Business Network. I'm Claire. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you if I haven't done so already. I'm one of the directors here at the network, and it's an absolute pleasure to also have you join us here today. Talking Up Africa, previous episodes, like I've mentioned just before the start of the session, they are posted on our YouTube channel. Plus, you'll also see a wealth of video content that sits on ASBN's channel. So please subscribe. And whilst you're on the internet, please can you also go onto our LinkedIn page and give us a follow as well. Now, very quickly, Africa Scotland Business Network, we're an international business network that is born and built from the mother city of Africa here in gorgeous Cape Town. Now, contrary to what I'm wearing today and my accent, I am not sitting in Scotland. I'm here with our central team in Cape Town's city centre. So we then bridge an African business network with the country of Scotland and back as our focus to foster intelligence and business exchange. However, as we near our 4-year anniversary in business in November, we have become a much more global network, a lot more global than our brand suggests. We might have to rethink Africa Scotland quite soon. In fact, one of our members, Tidrise, who is speaking in this session today, is tuning in from Canada. And a very warm welcome to Cecilia, who has very kindly got up during the night to talk to you all today. So thanks very much, Cecilia. So I'm going to hand over to our very capable and dynamic moderator, Gordon Mackay. He's the head of sustainability and technology in public policy at Access Partnership in London. So he has an incredible oversight of what is actually happening with tech at the intersection of public policy. Now, Gordon is also a long-standing member of Africa Scotland Business Network, and he also serves as a board advisor. He is also a dear friend, and earlier on in the year, Gordon put me on the spot a little bit and asked me to officiate his wedding. So this is me slightly getting my own back on Gordon by asking him to kindly moderate and speak in this session for us today. So thanks very much, Gordon. Enjoy the speakers, enjoy the session, which will last approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. Please feel free to chat away in the chat box and feel free to ask questions live at the end of this session. So, Gordon, over to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Claire. It's great to see you all. I'd like to start by welcoming all of our panelists who will meet today. They're an outstanding panel who are working at the forefront of emerging technologies and innovation in Africa. They're really going to offer you some interesting insights today about how quickly the continent is changing, how quickly the continent is adapting, and how quickly the continent is really kind of taking in new technologies and how that's shaping African societies and the way that we think about ourselves as African. I myself am South African. I currently live in London. As Claire indicated, I head up sort of multilateral policy around AI specifically at the moment as a huge focus for me, and I'll use that as the introductory point for myself. But before we kick off, I also want to welcome everyone who's joined us today. Please participate via the live questions. There will be a question session. These sessions really are about bringing in thinkers and opportunities to ask tough questions, to really create opportunities for discussion. So that really is the focus point of today. So I do encourage you to please drop questions into the box and also join us for the question session at the end of the panel. As you've seen today, we'll run for about 55 minutes. I'll introduce the topic around AI policy, and then we'll kind of delve deeper in with each one of our speakers, who I'll briefly introduce before they speak, if that's okay. So, as I said, I work in AI policy. AI is on the lips of everybody. About a year ago, most of us probably didn't know that much about AI. Most of us probably weren't thinking about it or having sleepless nights about it. Most of us probably thought that AI was kind of a version of the Terminator. That's kind of a very, very scary version of where we're going. But just to put it in context, there are currently about 800 AI policies currently being developed globally about, in terms of the development of AI policy across 69 countries. What to say literally about the subject is that there is no real consensus about what AI regulation should look like, what it would potentially look like. We're very much in the dark around how we're going to regulate this environment. And this is partly because of the very specific nature of this technology and the generative nature of this technology, but also because the large swathe of public policy professionals globally, whether they be in government or externally, have never had to deal with this level of complexity in sort of public policy making. And therefore, we're seeing global calls for global regulatory models, and we're seeing calls for regional regulatory models. We're seeing the need, big discussions around what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the need for regulation to drive AI development, or do we let AI development become market-led and catch up with regulation? The clear point right now is that sort of there is no clear consensus. You would have noticed about 2 weeks ago at the UN General Assembly, AI was largely discussed. About 103 member countries spoke about the critical importance of AI to their development, their concerns about AI. And that is to say that even the UN is considering what role it could play in global regulations for AI. The key point here is that because of the innovation behind AI, the significance of AI, and the real potential to transform societies, both economically, socially, and on a national security level, it is very unlikely that the large countries will allow an overarching regulatory environment. Individual countries such as Europe are pushing forward ahead with the AI regulation that will shape Europe. They're leading. The AI Regulatory Act in Europe is expected to pass the European Parliament by the end of the year. This is considered to be the first sort of big AI regulatory document or sort of series of AI regulations, which will kind of shape what the rest of the world does in comparison to that. That's to say that Africa has to make its own choices about its AI regulation, very specifically based on the challenges that it faces to develop AI within the context of Africa, and also deal with some of the negative aspects of AI. The key point here is also to point out that AI is not a new concept in Africa. AI is already embedded in multiple industries. According to a recent survey, AI is significantly or presents itself significantly, at least 30 industries in Africa. The leading sector for investment in AI is fintech. This is followed by healthcare and education. The total investment into AI into Africa last year was $529 million. This is up from $345 million in 2020. This is a significant growth of about 53% year on year. That, however, in terms of absolute scope, is still very limited if you consider that between 2010 and 2022, the US invested $249 billion into their roughly 4,643 AI companies. The top 10 companies of the world, the minimum investment going into AI is about $5 billion, and that's in Singapore with about 165 AI companies. Africa does fairly well on the AI sort of companies list. There are currently about 457 AI-related companies across Africa. Important to note, however, that most of these, or 50% of these, are still in seed or pre-seed stages, which means that they're still heavily reliant on international investment to be established into anything majorly significant or to be able to contribute to real economic growth or development. That said, as I really want to point out today, AI operates in 30 different sectors in Africa. As I've already pointed out, the prominent sectors, they are fintech, healthcare, education. Agriculture is also a significant sector for AI development. It's important to note that most of these startups are, however, clustered around sort of specific points in Africa. Nigeria accounts for about 25% of startups, South Africa for about 33% of startups, with a similar amount in Kenya for representing startups in East Africa. The clear problem here is that Francophone Africa is clearly lagging in the AI ecosystem, and significant sort of investment and thought into how Francophone Africa might play catch up in AI development is something that we as sort of African policymakers or those interested in Africa will need to look into and think about more deeply. It's important to also note that while Africa has a good startup ecosystem around AI, most of Africa's AI companies have only really been founded in the past 5 years, with those sort of reaching even a higher number in the last 2.5 years. As I've pointed out, a lot of these startups are at a really early stage of development, and they are still pretty fragile, needing further support from either government or private sector investment. But significantly to point out again is just that AI is not a new concept to Africa. Often when you talk to some of the big tech giants, there is almost this failure to recognize Africa as a significant AI market. I'm glad to say that we see a greater investment by the big 5 tech companies into Africa. You would note that Google established its first AI research center in Ghana in 2019. We see a significant uptake by Meta into investment into Africa, AI ecosystem, and Microsoft itself recently just is purported to put together a report on the potential for AI in Africa and AI growth and the contribution of AI to economic development within Africa. I'd like to just draw sort of one final conclusion, which is very much around what are the challenges facing greater AI uptake in Africa. And obviously one of the significant challenges that we face is data availability. There's a very limited access to high quality data sets in Africa, which is very difficult, therefore, to kind of create the kind of scale that we need to train AI models, particularly AI focused or AI centered models, to ensure that they kind of reflect the broader social thinking within Africa, which is obviously one of the key challenges in AI training in general, is how it kind of internalizes data and what that implications are for society more broadly. For Africa, connectivity is still a critical issue. We cannot really build an AI ecosystem without enhanced infrastructure and sort of enhanced connectivity. And therefore, I was quite pleased to see that at the recent UN General Assembly, this idea of connectivity remained very high on the agenda, not only from African states, but big business as well. We saw significant and renewed commitment from big players such as AWS, Google, and Meta around supporting greater infrastructure development within the African context, with serious commitments around funding to improve that. As the infrastructure improves, there will be a quicker and faster growth of AI within the African context. Globally, there is a skills shortage on AI, particularly, particularly in Africa. However, Africa is not unique in the fact that it has a skill shortage in AI. You will note, obviously, with significant investments in the US, Europe, and China, that the vast majority of AI specialist sort of training and skill sets mainly exist in those 3 orientations. There will be a significant need for policymakers to consider how we support AI skills development within the African context, what kind of incentives might need to be made available to support that. So really significant in that case and scenario. I just want to touch on one final concern, and that is regulation. As I said, there isn't a global consensus around what AI regulation should look like. AI has the vast potential to really create new economic opportunities across the continent, but it also, with the role of AI and disinformation, it could also destabilize African societies as it is doing globally. Therefore, there is a strong need for Africa to consider African-specific regulation that doesn't sort of undermine the development of AI within the African context, but also very much does consider how do we answer those questions around data availability, how do we attract investment, and how do we address skills. And therefore, policymakers need to be nimble here. They need to be innovative, they need to be creative, they need to take a steer from private sector institutions, the startup community in Africa, really heed their voices and understand what their needs and requirements are in order to really boost and support AI development within the African context. I'd like to sort of stop there, but just to kind of point out that Africa is a burgeoning continent. Once again, there's a huge opportunity for Africa to leapfrog with the use of AI technology. Once again, I think there is a deep spirit in the African context to often innovate and be innovative. And combining that innovative spirit with the use of AI, I think will significantly enhance the African opportunity to really bolster economic growth. And in this case, we do need to kind of figure out what role we as private sector players can play in helping bolster AI development within specific jurisdictions, but also how do we start pushing on or trying to help frame the policy framework that needs to take place to take that more, to allow AI to sort of embed itself more aggressively within the African context. On that point, I'd like to sort of pull a halt and kind of introduce our next speaker, Natasha from BVNK. Natasha, as you've heard, fintech is a significant growth node or investment node for AI. I think the figure that we last saw for 2021 was $182 million invested into fintech in Africa in 2021. We know that fintech is booming. And so I wanted to kind of come back to you. You are currently a CA, a staff and strategy operator for BVNK. Which is obviously a global fintech provider. Can you give us a brief insight into BVNK and how BVNK's technology specifically is adding value within the African context, and specifically to the role that it plays in transferring large sums of money, which are of critical importance within the African context, noting the huge amounts of money that the diaspora sends in and out of Africa constantly, which is much, much bigger than aid development spending in Africa. So it's a hugely significant inflow of cash. How is your technology and kind of BVNK playing a role, and what does this mean for the African context in terms of emerging tech?
Sure. Hi, Gordon. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. As Gordon said, I'm Natasha, and I'm a staff and strategy operator at BVNK. And I think I'll start off by touching on the very first point that you made when you started introducing me, just about the boom of fintech in Africa, right? It's really no surprise because we are such a growing population. I'm based in Johannesburg, by the way, so hence the use of we when speaking to Africa. But growing population with unique problems, right? As Gordon said, there's lots of money coming into Africa from the diaspora, people outside of Africa, and that is somewhat unique to Africa. And so that creates a lot of opportunities to solve these unique problems. And I think what we've seen is that the solutions and the services that exist in the more developed markets, Europe and the US, just are not suited for an African market, right? One of the best examples from a fintech perspective is looking at banking. And when we look at Kenya, banking penetration is sitting at around 33%, whereas M-Pesa, which is mobile money, being able to access your money on your phone, is the penetration there is in the high 90s, right? So the concept of being able to keep your money somewhere safely and transact is global, but how you solve that has to be a little bit more unique in the African context. So that brings me to BVNK and what we do. So I think it's important to understand our overall mission, and we are on a mission to make payments as accessible and sustainable as the internet. Right, that is a super large mission, and we're really, really excited about making it happen. We're a UK-based company, but we really, truly are worldwide. In terms of our presence from a staff perspective, we have offices in Cape Town, in the UK, in Sofia, Bulgaria, in Spain. We just launched one in Paris, but also from our services touch basically every single continent, because we are about making sure that money is able to move all across the world. So we are a global B2B payments company. So how do we go about this? Well, we use distributed ledger technology. Some people may know what that is. Some people may know of blockchain. It's effectively the same thing. We do prefer the term distributed ledger technology, and we use stable coins on that technology backed by US dollars in order to provide, I would say, two main services, but let's talk to the cross-border payments, which is what you had mentioned. Let's start there. We call it our global settlement network. And what we're able to do is help businesses move money between countries much quicker. We can have clearance times of T+0 and T+1. And if you are a business and you've tried a cross-border payment using traditional rails like SWIFT, you would know that that is easily T+5 or T+7. In addition, there's a lot less transparency. So for those 5 to 7 days, you don't know where your money is. But I think more importantly, we know for business people, speed is very, very important, and cash flow is very, very important, right? So when we think about your working capital cycle and how you're able to make decisions in terms of your liquidity, if you know you can get money from A to B in 2 days versus 7 days, that really does change the face of your business. And what that means is that people can do more business in Africa, and that's what, you know, we're really, really excited about. The other thing is our DLT payments service. And for me, I love to describe that as enabling businesses to meet customers where they are, right? If I go back to the example of Kenya and M-Pesa, the telcos understood that people definitely wanted to be part of a financial system, but they needed it to fit their lives. They needed to fit how their regulation works. They needed to fit how their infrastructure works. And so what we find with businesses is that, you know, they may have customers that say, hey, I'd actually really like to pay you in crypto. I'm very comfortable making a crypto payment. But the business says, that's great, but I don't want to hold crypto. So that's where we come in as BVNK to say, we'll help businesses be able to accept this payment, but they don't actually have to hold crypto. So we will exchange that for them. So we'll process the crypto for them, and they only need to hold fiat. And that means that businesses now don't need to, you know, limit how they're able to service and how they're able to provide businesses just based on payment methods. And we can make sure that alternative payment methods are super available within the continent. So, I mean, overall, I think in terms of the value that you were asking about, obviously speed is one, and that is very important to all of our merchants. With the speed also comes a reduction in cost. You know, with the infrastructure that we're using, with a lot less touch points as when compared to traditional money payments, the cost is reduced. And as I said, enabling alternative payment methods for our merchants, so then they can enable that for their customers. But I think a very African problem is always repatriation of funds, right? And if we want more international people to do more business in Africa, there needs to be that solution and that comfort to say, if I come in, I can get my funds out and bring them back in and bring them back out. We just want to make sure that we're able to flow, and us being able to provide our global settlement network provides that comfort to a lot of businesses who are then able to say, okay, I'm happy to do more business in Africa because I know there's a way to get my money out and do so in a very efficient manner. I think I'll just lastly touch on, you know, because you have been touching on AI, and I think it's, as you said, in the fintech space is really where there are a lot of benefits to be gained, and we can't agree anymore. In our space, obviously dealing with people's money, and in a cross-border context, anti-money laundering and know your customer compliance is extremely important to us. And we need to remember that at the end of the day, if you look at banks and even fintechs, that is a cost, right? If you have people who need to go through all of the information, check this information, cross-reference it all across the world. Once you're able to layer AI into that, it significantly reduces, you know, the manpower required, the time required, and that reduces the cost, which means we can enable even more payments across the continent. And then of course security. I think there's always room for security improvements. You know, we not only use blockchain, but we have banking partners, and so as soon as there's multiple, you know, facets in a value chain, you always need to be thinking about security. And I think, you know, AI is definitely one way to always keep improving on that. So yeah, that's just a little bit about BVNK. Oh, I think you're on mute, Gordon.
You know, many years into the COVID pandemic and we're still getting stuck on mute. So thank you, Natasha. Thank you for the intervention. I think really, really helpful. It was interesting that you made the links between sort of the African needs that are quite specific to Africa and how that results in innovation that is driving solutions to African problems. And I think that's a critical element of, you know, designing technology and technological solutions that are relevant within the African context. We can often seem insurmountable, but are in fact not that scary, and kind of, you know, African innovation is finding a way around that. Natasha, thank you so much. I'd like to introduce David from Right Digital. Unfortunately, he won't be able to be with us today, so he has sent us a video presentation, but just a bit about David. Many of the ASBN members will know David. He's one of the original founding members of the network and has been, I think, on a number of different conversations. He is an exceptionally innovative individual. He is the Chief Technology Officer of Right Digital, which is one of the world's most renowned visual and augmented educational technology specialists. I'd like to link at this point that education is critically one of the key investment areas for AI in Africa, noting that there was about $61 million worth of spend in that area last year. David and his team have been leading a lot of innovation around immersive technologies and augmented education within the African context, and he's actually prepared a short video presentation for us, which I think they'll now be able to play for us.
So hi, thank you very much for inviting me along to this. It's a great honour to be speaking on behalf of the Africa Scotland Business Network and on Talking Up Africa. And thank you very much for the previous speaker, Natasha's fascinating information on fintech and blockchain and how that's affecting Africa. My background is I'm the communications director for a company called Riot Digital, which is realities in IoT. So we cover a lot of new technologies and we work quite heavily across Africa. The IoT side of things is the Internet of Things. So it's a lot of internet connected devices, whether that be sensors picking up information from places or devices which can be controlled through the internet anywhere in the world. I'll get into that in a second. The other side of what we do is realities, which is virtual reality, augmented reality, etc., which I believe Ida is going to be talking about next after me, which is so she's working quite heavily in virtual reality sphere. But for our part, we do everything from the installation of sensors and IoT technology to the visualization of the sensor information or the controlling of them at the other end through things like virtual reality, whether that's remote, or augmented reality, which is where you're seeing the real world and you're getting a digital overlay of useful information from sensors right in front of you. So how we do this, or what we do with this, is we work with industries like medicine and industries like engineering, the energy sector, this kind of thing, to give people the information that they need to manage pipelines or to manage the building and the development and the maintenance of things like solar farms or, offshore or onshore wind farms and that kind of thing, so that they know exactly what's happening with their assets at that point, at any given point, so they can see whether a wind turbine blade is about to fail and stop the wind turbine in time and send people out. They can even use this information to predict when things are going to fail in the future, so that they can order replacements before anything even goes wrong, right? And then also this is useful for medical technology where things go missing, like you lose like surgical implements or equipment around hospitals. You can have little devices on them that track wherever they are within the hospital so that they can be found, or make sure that when you've finished surgery, you've got all of your forceps and things back and you haven't accidentally left them inside the patient, which unfortunately does happen. So this thing counts them in, counts them out again. So there's loads of aspects of technology that we can use. We even extend into the sphere of financial technology, which is going to be as was being spoken about already. So we're going to what we do with that technology is that we then make sure that people are equipped to use it. So not only can this equipment make massive savings in the industries that I mentioned, but it can also be used with the virtual reality side of things, the augmented reality side of things, to train people in using these technologies. So I'll give you some examples. If you are training in a high-risk environment, so that could be shimmying up a wind turbine, again, to use that example, or working in explosive environments, or with, for instance, high-pressure hydrogen or liquid petroleum gas or something like that, you need to know and be safe in how to use that before you actually get into an environment where you're working with it, right? Now, a lot of the time, these kind of skills, edtech skills and that kind of thing, are imported into Africa by big companies. They just go, well, we've got people that are trained to do this, so we'll just send them into Africa and we'll use those people. But fortunately, a lot of countries like Nigeria, as thank God we'll talk about later on, have local content obligations, which means that they oblige these offshore companies to use local labour. But that local labour does need to have the right training to be safe when they go out there. So rather than bringing people in to do the work, what we work on is creating safe environments where people can work with realistic versions of these high-risk pieces of equipment, these things that could put them and others at risk if they get it wrong. So they can be working on a high-pressure hydrogen container, they can be working at heights, they can be working offshore in an oil platform, and they know they've gone through every single potential eventuality in virtual reality, so that when they do get to the point of training where they're doing it in real life for the first time, they actually already know what they're doing. Now, this is great as well, because this can be sent across to any part of Africa, even the remote rural areas, with the connectivity that we have access to as part of RIOT as well. We can beam this stuff through low Earth orbit satellites to relatively cheap equipment, which can be dispersed into rural areas and villages and train people up that would not normally not get access to those kind of opportunities. We're doing it all over the world. We're doing it in Australia and in Europe, and of course across Africa. We've been speaking really heavily with Napton as a Nigerian training provider about providing this for solar and switchgear and electricity and this kind of thing, all these high-risk areas. Now, this can also be applied in medtech, because there's a great requirement, obviously, with the growing populations for better medical technology and more and higher trained people in the medical field. So you can train them in fields where they get it wrong might put somebody else at risk, not themselves, like surgery, like medicine, until they've gone through every possible eventuality. That could be doing CPR on somebody, but it turns out that that person's got weak bones or something like that, or it turns out that person has been electrocuted, and that's why you're doing CPR, versus somebody who's just had a fall and they had a dicky heart, and it's a different process you would use for them. So it takes them through all of these options and opportunities. This is why a lot of the work that we do is with education, with universities, colleges especially, local training centres, and even outreach, where we're sending out things like virtual reality headsets and boxes, or augmented reality equipment, or augmented reality software that will work on any equipment, whether it be a mobile phone or a headset, it doesn't matter. And they can see this information contextualized in their environment. It appears right in front of them at real scale, and they can interact with it, but they don't need expensive equipment for that. And like I say, we've got the connectivity covered. And then that brings us right back to the IoT stuff, because a lot of the equipment that we're dealing with is state of the art, installations of stuff that very few people have used anywhere in the world. So they need to be trained in it, right? Now, this gives African countries the opportunities that they're taking with, grasping with both hands, to be at the forefront of working with this technology in these industries that I'm talking about. Putting a sensor on an oil gas pipeline to see whether or not it's high or low pressure, and what to do about it next. Working out how to install irrigation in a certain kind of area, and it uses artificial intelligence and augmented reality to see where the irrigation channels would go. You need to know how to use this stuff in order to be able to use it, right? And what's really gratifying about working with the countries across Africa is that those are the countries that are leading the world. Those are the countries that, when we get taken in by Australia and Shell and The Hague, when we're dealing with them, and they say, well, is this new? Has anybody done this before? We'll be saying, no, it's been done in Africa more often than not. You guys are the case studies. So it's been a real pleasure over the last years and decades for me to be working with Africa, because it's a continent that embraces new ideas, and the kind of content, the kind of equipment and the technology that we work with is all about new ideas. So we're a good fit. So once again, it's a massive honor to be invited to speak about this, about what we're doing in Africa and what Africa is doing for itself. And I guess I'll be passing you on to Cecilia, who will be telling you about labour management and technology labour, and how that's been developed and placed out. And then after that is Natasha, and thank God. So I look forward to listening to their content shortly. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you to David from Riot Digital, who wasn't able to be here, but I think very helpful points to kind of identify how technology gaps are actually creating opportunities and innovation in technology that then relate to our abilities to address the skills gap, which, as we have identified, is one of the critical sort of inhibitors to greater uptake of emerging technologies in Africa. We're actually going to move on to Ida from Journey. Ida is a global speaker, and she is actually a deep thinker on key elements around specializing in emerging technology and the future of the internet. She's also a global speaker on the metaverse. So we're very glad to have you. Very welcome, Ida. Ida, the metaverse was something that we heard a lot about 12 months ago. It seemed to have been supplanted by AI. Is there something here that you can help us understand why the metaverse is still important, why the immersive web is really important for Africa, and what kind of challenges we can expect to kind of the adoption of the immersive web and some of the benefits in Africa?
Absolutely. First of all, great to be here and amazing speakers previously. I think we have a lot of points that are going to cross over as well. So when we speak about, you already mentioned metaverse and immersive web, right, in one sentence. So what is it actually that we're talking about? A year ago, it was what everyone were mentioning. And I think back then, the idea was very much this vision that Meta had, where the VR goggles and whatever that would mean. We also focused a lot on solutions such as Roblox, Sandbox, etc. So worlds where people go in, hang out, play games, do things, have branded experiences, etc. So destinations. But what we're seeing in also this kind of quieting down of speaking about metaverse is that we have finally reached a more, like a better way to describe what's actually going on. So what we see in pointers of is that the internet as not only having, blockchain technologies, AI technologies, etc., that is being integrated into it, but we're also seeing a transition from a 2D flat experience to a 3D internet. So an internet that we can step into and have a meaningful experience. Now, whatever we want to name that, metaverse, spatial, as Apple refers to it, or immersive web, as we say at Journey, that doesn't really matter. And the key element here is that the device doesn't matter. So for me, immersive web is any browser, any device, phone, laptop. It can be a goggles, it could be anything, but it's still the internet as we know it, but we can step into it now. So I think already there, when we have that kind of definition, it's pretty obvious what kind of challenges we would have across Africa. We've already spoken about connectivity, so I don't really need to go into that. Second one is devices. If we look at smartphones, which is the most common way to access any immersive experiences today, we're behind, right? I think we are somewhere at 50% of smartphone penetration right now, where globally it's way beyond. And even if you look at the projections for 2030, I think we're supposed to land at something like 87%, where globally then we'll be at something like 95. So we will be continuing to be behind. But on the other side, by the end of the decade, Sub-Saharan Africa and India will account for nearly half of the world's new mobile subscribers. So that gives an opportunity as well, right? So devices, and especially if you look at solutions that are very focused on VR, they are expensive. We are not going to have access to that type of solutions. A third challenge that I would like to raise is diversity. For me, it's an opportunity, but I think if you look at kind of what Clint was mentioning before, that we often import solutions. And if we import an American solution, it's not going to be great for the diversity of languages and cultures that we are having. I think that should be an answer, maybe, Gordon.
Yes, thanks. That's really helpful. I mean, it's an incredibly interesting and complex environment, the immersive web. And I'm just wondering, have you guys had an opportunity to consider what types of economic opportunities or problems that could solve utilizing or relying on the immersive web? What are the most practical applications in the short term for the immersive web in, say, the next 3 to 5 years within the African context?
Absolutely. For me, I like to think of the biggest opportunity with immersive web now, again, thinking of it as web and not a VR device, but accessible with just a smartphone with Netflix connection. Okay, so if we think of it that way, then the biggest opportunity for me is the democratization of high quality, meaningful experiences that you can access as long as you just have that sort of decent internet connection. And then what would experiences then be? So education is a big one for me. We've mentioned it earlier here today, where immersive web give us the opportunity to think of what happens if we step into, for example, history. What does that do to learning? And especially if we are having challenges with literacy or other things. What if you could go and meet people from history telling you what it is and have a full experience? We know humans learn much better that way. So I believe that that is a huge opportunity, and then education across the board, not only thinking of schooling or universities, but any type of education, especially if you combine with AR, as Klink was mentioning just before. Another one is culture and entertainment. We at Journey have a beautiful case recently from the Philippines, which is obviously an economy where the common consumer doesn't have access to, for example, see their favorite pop band perform. It's just too expensive. So we did a concert there of a famous band called BGYO. It's a kind of K-pop goes P-pop band. And the interesting thing was that what the users were saying, or the people that came to the concert, they said that they changed their life because they could never have afford to see this band play before. They never ever could have a feeling of a meaningful, high quality experience with their favorite band. So what does that, how can we translate that to the African context, right? Mm-hmm. We can think of it as local to local, giving experiences like of a famous band to much wider audiences that could possibly not afford it otherwise. But we can also think of it as local to global. What are the cultural and entertainment pieces that we want to showcase to the world? I also think this is huge scope for government services, for example, tourism promotion. Again, how do we brand Africa to the world? But then also brand experiences. Again, with diverse population, immersive web gives opportunity to have an experience instead of like being told something. And that can be improved even more when we're implementing AI into immersive web. Because suddenly then you can be guided in your local language, for example. Last one, I think, could be huge for Africa is remote participation. So meaning, for example, being hired by a global company, for example, and being able to participate in training as a breeze instead of complications that we have now.
Those are fantastic examples. I think it just sort of brings to mind, obviously we know South Africa, for example, has an extensive and very successful global DJ culture. Black Coffee, for example, hits up the decks across Ibiza, across the European summer. And just for Africans to experience, DJ coffee on a world stage like that would really, I think, be really helpful. But more on a more practical level, also the idea of remote working for Africans and even the sub-Saharan Asia. I know that's a big thing in India, for example, the remote working culture, and noting what's happening in UK companies needing a broader skill set. Obviously in the UK, in London, we have a skill shortage. We are kind of, the labor market is desperately searching for new skills, and would be a fantastic opportunity to be able to use immersive technologies to bring in global workers, particularly from Africa in these contexts, and therefore allow them to remain within the African context, participate in African societies while still accessing global opportunities. So I think the innovation there, and it's really impressive, and I'm looking forward to the development in that. Thank you so much for your intervention. I'd like to move on to Cecilia. Hello, Cecilia. Cecilia is currently the Vice President of Operations at TideRise. She's a small business specialist, and she's hugely passionate about supporting startups. Welcome, Cecilia. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you, Gordon. Yes.
Go ahead, Cecilia. Would you like to say something? No, question. Excellent. TideRise is almost like a model tech firm whose business is based in Canada, has created long-term jobs for over 100 Malawians. Can you explain the business model to us, Cecilia, and what other tech firms can potentially learn from TideRise in employing a similar type model?
Thank you, Gordon. So TideRise is a BPO, which is a business process outsourcing company. We have an office in Canada with 4 people working here, mainly in business development. But we have our fulfillment office, a center, a registered company in Malawi called TideRise Malawi, which employs over 100 people now. So what we do is get technology or tech-enabled jobs from North America and Europe, and we have those fulfilled in our center in Malawi. We'll go into how we do that, but before I get there, I think people might ask, like, why Malawi? Why are you doing that there? So the reason we're doing it in Malawi, I think we all know that Malawi is the third poorest country in Africa, and over the decades, there's been significant investment from donor agencies into education in Malawi, as well as agriculture. So trying to, break the vicious cycle of poverty, but that hasn't worked as well, because now it's created this large pool of educated young Malawians. The average age in Malawi is 16.5, while the whole Africa, the continent, is 19.8, I think. So you know that Malawi has a very young population and educated population. We have a lot of graduates, and what has been happening before is a lot of families, and I should say before, until now, a lot of families are having to choose one child to send to university for higher education. So you have 3 kids and you can only afford to send one child to school. So you're, growing your crop and you're selling your produce year over year. And after 4 years, your child graduates and you're all excited because now this child will save us all. He's gonna support his siblings or her siblings and the parents. But guess what? Reality sinks in after graduation and the child realizes there's no jobs. He or she cannot get a job. So I think we've all heard about, teach a child to fish or teach a person to fish and giving them fish. Well, the challenge is, what if there are no ponds to fish from? Mm-hmm. This is the situation in Malawi. We don't have ponds for these recent graduates to fish from. So instead of becoming productive individuals in society, contributing fully to the economy, they are not able to, and they are sitting there very frustrated. There's a lot of suicide among youth in Malawi because of frustrations and depression and all that stuff. So we decided to participate in technology through creation of jobs in Malawi. There's now connection. We have 5G now in most cities. Starlink is there. So we've taken advantage of that and, decided to set up this center that we have. We started in 2019 with 15 people that we trained through business ethics and professionalism, like all sorts of things to make them work ready. And after that training, we realized very quickly that these people were able to perform at same standards as North American youth. Online, they did different jobs and they were able to do very well. So we've worked with various companies in North America. We manage the teams ourselves, but they are working also directly with the employers in North America, depending on what company this team is assigned to. They will have direct contact with the employer. We support on the back end, like with, maybe clocking in and out. We're managing all that. So the employer really is cutting a lot of costs by choosing Malawi. And again, why Malawi? The BPO industry is very big. It's a $339 billion industry, and it's more concentrated in India and the Philippines. But because of demand and with the AI demands and all the annotation that's required, the price has gone up. With high demand comes high pricing. So a lot of companies now are looking to Africa to have their needs fulfilled. So with that educated population in Malawi, English-speaking young people, lack of jobs in Malawi, there is a huge pool. It's like presenting a very untapped market for all these companies to take advantage of and really use the talent that's there, but also providing these young people with a hand up. And we're not looking for a handout. They are looking to work and earn a living. So very committed population there, and it's just been going very well with the people that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we are in an office that can take up to 1,000 people if we have to scale up. We have triple power backup. We have 99% uptime with our internet. So really, we're doing very well with that technology. We are able to service our clients without any interruptions. And maybe you may wonder what type of jobs we're doing. We just give you examples of maybe two or three of the clients that we're working with. We have a client that we do annotation for. So we're really supporting machine learning. We do a lot of annotation. We do a lot of data analysis. We are also not just focused on AI and machine training. We are also looking at supporting sales. So we do a lot, like we do Salesforce. We have one company that we work with. We're doing marketing operations and campaign management for them. We do customer reporting for them, CRM process management and sales operations, lead generation, just to mention a few. And we have another company. We're doing annotation and product images, SKU monitoring and updating, and basket review and confirmation. For another company, we're doing, again, campaign management, image and review processing, and customer service, managing their Zendesk. So there's various things that we can do with the talent that we have in Malawi. We have a team that's doing computer-aided design services for a company here in Canada. So there's no shortage of the things that we can do. There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of support, and all we're looking for is companies to work with us to bridge this divide that is there in Malawi, to give these young people jobs and to help them become full contributors to the economy.
Cecilia, thank you. I mean, that's an incredibly extensive product offering and really impressive operations. Is there one thing that you'd want the world to know about TideRise, about the success of your model? Is there something that you could share with us around, what makes your operation so unique? I know you've pointed out your baseline in Malawi, the significant use of technology, the excellent combination of skill sets. But is there some sort of barrier that we can help you overcome that people need to know about TideRise to make it more utilized as a firm?
Yes, thank you. So the one thing that we're very proud of and that drives us is our mission is to bring opportunity to parts of the world where talent exists, but opportunity is not available. And we count our success by the number of people that we employ and not just the bottom line. So there's a huge impact when somebody gives us that opportunity and we hire a person in Malawi, and hiring one person creates a lot of opportunity for almost the entire community. With one person that's hired, most of our staff, they are doing farming right now. They've invested in different small businesses, so they are also hiring other people, and we've got almost 26% multiplier from one employment that we offer. So the community is benefiting, the families are benefiting, and there's growth all around. So we've seen these young people really literally like come in day one and transform, and you see the confidence and just the energy they have changed when they're given this hope that they have this employment. And we also hire full-time. We're not giving them piecework and give them a job today and tomorrow they're not working. We have been keeping some staff on some people on staff who don't have a client, just because we didn't want to let them go. We'll keep them on for months until we get another client and we get more work for them. So we are taking this seriously. Our Malawi operation is managed by Malawians, and all the leadership and the staff, they're all Malawians. There's no expatriate there. So that is something we are proud of as well. We are proud of how we treat them, like the offices they have. They really have these clean offices in the city, and we drop them off when they wake at night, because we run 3 shifts. and each shift is 8 hours. They have their lunch breaks, they have benefits, so they are really treated very well. We're really trying to make sure that people are happy and their welfare is at the heart of the company.
Cecilia, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the insights. And I mean, it's wonderful to see such a well-rounded and development company that's focused on promoting not only skills development in Africa, but making us competitive as a global player. Thank you so much. I'd like to switch. Thank you. I'd like to switch gear. I'd like to introduce our last speaker for today, who is Thank God from Cypher Crescent in Nigeria. Thank God is an engineer, globally experienced engineer with over 20 years experience working in a variety of projects in engineering. I wanted to speak to you, Thank God. Welcome, first of all. Thank you very much for being here. Could you give us some insights on how Nigeria is adopting technology over its infamous oil and gas sector, and how Cyber Crescent specifically is contributing to the energy transition via the use of technology?
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Gordon. Nice listening to all the speakers doing amazing things in technology in Africa. So start first of all as a Cypher Crescent. We are an engineering technology company based in Nigeria, where we leverage local content, leverage knowledge from people from experts and experience from people working in oil and gas industry in Nigeria and so on. Like like most persons have already said, the oil and gas industry technology is dominated by foreign companies, the big multinational companies. And so once you have any startup actually going to oil and gas space, you know that you are basically going to actually contend with the very big multinational, international, highly funded service companies. And so most of the technology leverage in Nigeria are actually from these companies and so on. What we have in the past 10 years, 15 years, you've had the local content laws coming up and marginal field encouraging energy companies, smaller marginal field oil and gas companies coming up, getting some producing as low as 2,000 barrels per day, some as 3,000 barrels, and sometimes they are not able to afford the very expensive technology from the big multinationals and so on. And you also have a case where most of this technology were not built for Nigerian region and so on. So what we do at Cypher Crescent is basically to co-create technology. It's about corporate innovation. How do we work with these companies, understand specifically the challenges they have, work with them, and then co-create solutions. So our experience cuts across mathematical modeling, machine learning, IoT, software development, to and engineering with strong engineering research to actually solve problems. So the mission is basically to co-create solutions that will actually encourage the energy companies, smaller energy companies, to actually adopt technology. So we have a variety of clients, case studies that we've had, of course, helping to reduce efficiency by as much as sometimes 90, 95%, and so on. So the oil and gas, like some of us know, the oil and gas industry in Nigeria and like in most of our part of Africa, it's about 40, 50 years. We have a lot of data. And most of this data actually legacy data in traditional format. So what we do at Cypher Crescent is actually promoting digitalization and data democratization, basically working with these companies, getting their data, integrating the data to create a single source of truth to enable them actually carry out probably well intervention, carry out production optimization routines specific to them. So basically we call this helping companies to have high operational leverage, where our technology we developed is basically customized to fit the processes of these companies, unlike picking up technologies that they have, expensive technologies. And of course, you also look at business model. Most times you start looking at the business models employed by the big multinational companies don't really fit with what you have the local smaller companies. So what we do is basically to come up also with innovative business models that will be able to actually make the very small companies with 5 wells, 10 wells feel happy to adopt technology. But the challenge is why most of the companies don't adopt technologies, that the assets are actually not as mighty as the multinationals. And the software that you have, the technology that is deployed actually targeted and designed for the very big multinational companies. So you now find out that most of the other companies are not able to adopt technology, but we're coming into the space to actually work with these companies. We encourage them to actually adopt innovative business models that will actually enable them leverage technology at a very low cost to actually pick up that. So we're actually driving that using different business models, pentahelix, triple helix, and a different kind of service dominant logic to actually manage that in Nigeria. So that's actually helped to improve sensitization and also help to improve, encourage a lot of companies to adopt technology in Africa, in Nigeria specifically.
Thanks. Thank God. You've just mentioned the triple helix model. I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit more, because it is quite innovative in terms of supporting small business growth. Can you explain the impact of using this, how this is growing small business, and what impact this is having on the Nigerian economy?
Yes. So for the triple helix model, it's basically a collaboration between government, university, and industry to actually drive innovation, where we will have a challenge, and that challenge from the industry is actually studied by the university, and then we support from government. But we start finding out that in most developing countries, we struggle to actually operationalize triple helix as being conceptualized by the bigger multinational companies, by the big European countries. So we are actually provided an innovation around the triple helix model using the Cobb-Douglas production function to bring out two core elements, talk about the finance and also talk about the innovation. So we call it a pentahelix model to bring in two other helices from the triple helix model to start looking at the entrepreneur who has successfully navigated that terrain. How do you bring him to drive innovation, and also looking at some financial institutions? So the concept is actually a corporate innovation concept where a company has an issue, a business problem, and it contacts a successful entrepreneur like a Cypher Crescent or a couple of other entrepreneurs who have solved that problem, and then also look at how do you design this and bring in the university, some center of excellence in the university to support in carrying out that research. And then, of course, the local content body and other petroleum technology development agencies in the country will be parts of that and also have funding. So it's like a 5-stakeholder model that involves the entrepreneur, that involves the financial institution, that involves government, that involves university, and also the company that has that problem. So it helps to actually drive sustainable startup, sustainable innovation, that once we have a business problem, there's actually a market for that problem, there's funding for that problem, there are laws to actually help you to scale that problem. So that's the whole objective of the triple helix and pentahelix model, is like to develop the economy full circle from the university to the industry to the financial institutions, all coming in to support innovation. So that's the concept of triple helix. And of course, we in Nigeria are actually driving it from that pentahelix model to bring in two other helices to actually localize triple helix in Nigeria and in Africa. Thank you.
And God, that's fantastic. I mean, having innovation around the actual startup ecosystem itself. Are you seeing that that's actually supporting the sustainability of startups, and is that helping drive startup development in Nigeria outside of the energy sector, or is this still very much within an energy sector innovation?
Yes, it's actually started from the energy sector, but it's still being used outside. We're actually pushing around because we have a very strong a government body that is collaborating with Cypher Crescent and a couple of other companies to drive that. It's a concept that we're actually sensitizing and popularizing nationally, and a lot of other sectors are picking up, like the health sector, also picking it up, and also having people in the fintech and agri-tech also picking up that concept. It's an innovative concept that actually helps to build sustainable startup that have access to market and have access to funding, and also have supporting government policies to actually drive that. Is the whole concept of triple helix and localized in Nigeria as pentahelix.
Thank you. Thank God. I appreciate your intervention and your time. We've come up to the top of the hour, and I'd like to open up for some questions for our speakers. I'm sure there are a few. Just by way of summary, we've had quite an extensive chat today about sort of different elements of emerging technology in Africa. We've covered AI regulation and a bit of the AI conversation within Africa. We've looked specifically a bit more into fintech and sort of transfer of large sums of money across borders. We've had an interesting intervention around edu technology. as well, and understanding how edtech is kind of leading and addressing some of the skills as well as technology gaps within Africa. We've had a fantastic conversation with Ida about the immersive web and the metaverse and the potential that it has for Africa and potential for growth in the next 3 to 5 years. We also had a fantastic conversation about innovation in business processing and how Africa is potentially leading the way, particularly through an innovative model that is being used by TideRise. And now we've just had a summary, sort of, thank God, who's just kind of introduced us to this concept of the triple helix as support for the startup an innovation ecosystem by providing it with kind of support to make sure that that can be rolled out for smaller and more tailored solutions for African companies based in Africa who are smaller and mid-sized. Claire, how would you like us to handle the questions? Have we got any in the inbox at the moment?
Hi, Gordon, and thank you to all of our incredible speakers. That was such a fascinating conversation today from all of our panelists. Thank you. Does anyone, I'm going to open up the floor now for questions. Does anyone want to go first? Do we have a brave soul that wants to go first and open up with the first question today? We do. It's actually from our own team member, Belinda, taking advantage there. The perks of working for ASBN. Gordon, what are the most promising areas of technology investments for business looking to make a positive impact in Africa? Does anyone, would anyone like to answer that question?
I think Belinda's given us a very hard question, and I think from my experience of the conversation we've had today is that there are very specific areas of development across the technology ecosystem in Africa that requires a sort of growth and support. As you've indicated, you know, Africa shows a particular strength in areas of fintech, healthcare, and education, agriculture. But as pointed out by different speakers today, it's even more diverse than that. Natasha, did you want to come in and add to that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's similar to what you're saying. And it goes back to the very first point that I made, that we have a lot of people and we have a lot of unique problems, right? But I don't like using the word problems. It's a lot of unique opportunities. And I think that's what makes it so that every time you make investments in Africa, you're always touching lives and you're always making an impact. It really is just about how much impact do you want to make, right? It's a little bit simpler, you know, when you're speaking to potentially like impact investors and stuff. It's actually quite simple, because as long as the investment's in Africa, we can always draw a dotted line to what the impact is going to be on individuals within the space. So to your point, it's extremely wide. But you know, whenever you're going to the basics that people need, so you're talking health, education, and you know, financial needs, usually that is where you're going to have the most impact. But it's everywhere.
Are any of our speakers kind of experiencing any specific investment challenges? I'm just thinking, Ida, the sort of the metaverse immersive experience, is that something that's particularly well funded at the moment, or is that something that actually is really struggling to create? What is the investment climate like in your sphere of technology?
I think if you would look globally, anything related to metaverse doesn't have focus at the moment, as we know. But when it comes to the underlying technology, so actually going more towards spatial immersive web rather than thinking what we thought metaverse would be about a year ago, then there's definitely funding coming in.
Excellent. Cecilia, thank God, was there anything on funding that you guys thought was sort of interesting and specific to your experiences?
For us, there isn't funding needs, because this kind of work really requires little funding to start. So that's the beauty of it. There isn't a lot of investment other than in training the staff. And so just to answer Belinda's question as well, I think the investments that are coming into Africa, we should not just look at using technology. Africans should not be just users of the technology, but we should be actively involved in the development, which I see is happening in a lot of countries, as well as just participating in like training, like the work we are doing, participating by training the machines and supporting the companies that are developing the technology. So that's where the huge investment is, and it has a lot of impact in Africa when we're actually very involved, not as just users, but as developers and employers of technology.
Let me add to that, Gordon.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks. Thanks. Like Cecilia mentioned, it's changing. The landscape in Africa is changing from consumers of technology to developers of technology. A company like Cypher Crescent, we actually do all our development from Africa, actually supporting the corporate organization from corporate innovation perspective. And when you look at funding, Natasha, the rest are actually well funded in the fintech sector because it's well understood. But in the energy sector, oil and gas sector, it's actually not well understood by the investors that you have. So you find it challenging to actually have very little startups around that area. There's a lot of opportunities in the energy sector, especially oil and gas sector. It's not well understood. Lots of problems to solve, and the competitors are actually very heavy, and it discourages a couple of persons to pick up that. So once there's got a good funding that comes up into the energy sector, I'm sure there are a lot of startups that will spring up there. So that's basically why we are promoting the triple helix and pentahelix model that will be able to actually help investors actually bring in money into that innovation ecosystem to actually drive innovation in that area, because it's actually not known by the traditional investors that will have. So lots of opportunities around that area, and then we look forward to investors who actually are interested in the energy sector, especially in Africa. Thank you
so much. Thank God. We actually have a question, and I'll make this the last question. We've got 3 minutes left in the session. The question has came via David King. He is one of our member companies up in Durban through ChatGPT. Could this be a first? The first ChatGPT question posed to a human panel. And quite simply, and Gordon, perhaps this is a question for yourself, if that's okay. What initiatives are being undertaken to ensure the important equitable access across the continent? I'm assuming that means to technology.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is, and this is actually a question building on that, it was a question I wanted to propose to our speakers, is that the regulatory environment in general either has a gap on technology, it isn't sometimes supportive, but in most times it's prohibitive. And so very much around the conversation that we've had today, each one of us in our different sectors is facing a different regulatory framework or environment. And in most cases, that regulatory framework is just a gap of regulation. So it's neither supportive, it's neither prohibitive, but in that case, it also doesn't create the framework or structure or resilience that we need to help foster investment in emerging technologies. The key point with technologies is that it should be market-led, it should be user-led. The key point is that, Africans should not be prohibited from using devices and technologies. We should not be we should be very aggressively against internet shutdowns. Those sorts of events that prohibit Africans from fully participating in sort of the global use of technology. Right now, there isn't very much coordination around, how countries facilitate the use of technology in their countries. Most countries are very singularly obsessed with the cybersecurity elements, some of the disinformation elements, and right now that seems to be the core focus of governments. But in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and particularly I'd say more Kenya right now. Kenya is the leading country on the continent for kind of supporting the uptake of emerging technologies, creating the investment and regulatory climates to support that. And we're seeing that in terms of the numbers that we're seeing in terms of investment. I think South Africa is a little bit eye off the ball generally. Obviously, a lot of the startup community is in South Africa. It is founded there. But I think innovation, as you could hear from the intervention from, thank God, the Nigerian kind of climate seems to be far more supportive to creating a startup infrastructure to support startup communities, which I think other African countries could learn from to support their own startups. Because as we've said, we've only got about 457 startups in the AI space. Of those, 50% are sort of nascent. They're just getting off the ground. They're going to need support. And if we're going to utilize sort of the full potential of technology on the continent, we're going to have to move from our regulatory environments just being a gap to actually being very supportive.
Thanks so much, Gordon. I'm going to be really, really cheeky just because I can. There's an excellent question that's came through in the chat from Bali, and it's about the democratization of data. Her question is, would you advocate for an intracontinental data bank? And what threats could this potentially pose in addition to the opportunities for data protection and privacy laws? Gordon, is this another one for yourself?
I think some of the other colleagues might also have something.
Sure.
I think that's particularly because of the regulation around people's privacy and sort of the rules. But fundamentally, the question around data is the new gold. We have to be concerned about how we use African data. And right now, you know, we do have issues around localization and sovereignty. We want to make sure that data can travel across borders freely, because obviously that's how, you know, we can leverage the growth of that. But at the same time, Africa also does need to sit down and consider where data is stored, how we store it, how it is accessed, what is the privacy rights of our citizens, how do other companies access, because we do want to monetize our data within the global scheme. We don't just want to have our data accessed and used freely. That said, I am free market orientated. I do believe in the free flow of data across borders, but I do think that the African context needs to reevaluate where we store data and how our data is used. Are there any of the colleagues on the call who feel something different or similar around, you know, data is obviously a very big question. It's kind of underpins the economy of digitization. And I don't think they do. There we go. Claire, I think that's it from our end. I'd maybe just to go back and extend the thanks to the speakers who were fantastic. I think I learned a lot, and I work in the space very proactively. So thank you very much for your interventions, and the guidance today was fantastic. And obviously, anyone on the call today can reach out to any one of us. We're happy to field calls via ASBN or via our LinkedIn's. And if there is something where there is an opportunity to work together or partner, I'm sure we'd all be interested in being able to do that. So please don't be shy to reach out to any of us on the call today. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks very much, everyone, and to our speakers. Thanks again. Thank you to our audience for joining us today in episode 4 of Talking Up Africa. Please do let us know what topics you want us to discuss in the next couple of months in Talking Up Africa episode 5. Thank you and have a great day further.